that. Okay.
Thank
So, so with that, I'm going to hand over to Neha, so she gets actually maximum time on this call. Um, as Brian mentioned, okay, Neha worked with us as a consultant because at the beginning of this year, we felt that to be more effective, ERI once again needs to get in contact with its network and especially with you, our advocacy collaborators, okay, to see how best we can address your needs. Okay, and that's why we ran this ERI Needs Assessment. And thank you to all of you for participating in it. Okay, Neha has really been key to this whole initiative and to this whole survey, creating the forms and then analyzing them and coming up with a report. So I've invited Neha at this time to share with you the feedback, especially from you advocacy collaborators, okay, on this needs assessment. So with that, Neha, over to you.
Thank you so much. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who wrote in, because if not, this assessment would really not have would not have got us the answers maybe that will help the direction that ERI is looking to take ahead. I'm going to share my screen to give you first an overview of the whole process and the findings of the entire process, and then bring the focus onto the advocacy coordinators and what has emerged from there. I'm conscious of the time, so I may not be able to take you through everything, but we've shared some documents on email and happy to take any questions if they come up. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of the purpose with which this exercise was undertaken. So essentially, to look at what has been the engagement with different stakeholder groups, what are the needs emerging from there, also based on the challenges faced by these different groups. So these groups included schools, NGOs at local province level or at international global levels, projects of the Edmund Rice Network, the congregational leaders, the governing board, all of these were the different groups identified. And at the end, to see how is this aligned with the whole network, is the vision of with which ERI began continues, does it continue to align with the entire network, and how can this role therefore continue to support the network and the congregation in every way possible. Very simple methodology. We just looked at Google Forms. Though the questions were different for different groups, there was also a set of common questions to look at certain areas of engagement with ERI that all these different groups and individuals have. It took us about 2 months to kind of put everything together, a few days here or there. But that's the timeline that we took. This is the kind of responses we received. So you can see the different groups listed here. Maximum maximum emails were sent out to participants of online trainings. And you can see that we got maximum responses from there. So that is the largest group of participants who have been engaging with ERI. But we also had small but very critical groups like international NGOs, other collaborators, representatives from schools across our provinces, province leaders across the congregation, people who've attended the Geneva training, as well as some who've interned with the organization. So we tried to get as multi-dimensional a view as possible of how ERI is perceived, the role it plays right now, the kind of engagement people have, and therefore what is this going to be going ahead. This is a kind of a demographic view of where the responses came from. So again, thank you to all the coordinators who forwarded this in their network to schools. We've got a lot of responses from the India province and from UK, Ireland, and then others across Africa, USA, and some from Oceania also. One of the common questions asked, or one segment of common questions, was on exposure to ERI resources and trainings. And you can see that the website has been explored a fair amount. But the YouTube channel not so much. Newsletter, yes, a lot of people have been subscribing to it and finding it fairly useful. In terms of those who responded, we had 80% of them who had also attended online trainings, and about half who had also attended the Geneva training. So this is to just give you a sense of the profile of the respondents and their engagement. Now, based on this engagement, again, to see, what is the understanding that all these different groups are building of, let's say, concepts and practices of social justice and advocacy, as well as their understanding of UN mechanisms and opportunities to engage with the Human Rights Council. Now, very encouraging to see that, all those who responded, they are able to say that they're very familiar with or have a deep understanding of what social justice means or what advocacy means. So obviously, this is something that has gotten built through this engagement that they have with ERI. And how they use that in their role and work. In terms of understanding of UN mechanisms and their awareness of opportunities to engage with the Human Rights Council, again, fairly familiar, but there were many who also said they won't be able to explain this or they need more information. So that emerged as another area that needs more input or engagement. Most groups or all groups had an awareness of what ERI's role is, whether it was the schools, the international NGOs, other NGOs and projects in the network. They were all able to identify three main areas. One is capacity building with training and resources. The other is this ability to build partnerships and linkages. And of course, making collaborative statements and advocacy in the international forums. So these emerged as the primary areas of work and the role as it is perceived. What needs of the congregation does ERI fulfill right now? So again, one can see training, capacity building emerging here, supporting the school justice and advocacy program. So a lot of the engagement with the youth kept getting mentioned, and of course, engaging with international advocacy mechanisms of the UN as well as other human rights forums. So in fact, this kept getting reiterated by different groups, that this unique position that ERI has in terms of having access to a whole network of schools, youth, and educational institutions, as well as this connection with international groups and NGOs and forums to be able to, pursue advocacy at those levels. So this position to take youth into this position, into the processes of advocacy, was reiterated and reinforced a lot as being something unique to what ERI has. Most international NGOs, of course, looked at ERI as an advocacy partner. So in terms of preparing submissions, statements, delivering these statements, and lobbying with states also for these recommendations. But they are also able to recognize the role that ERI plays in capacity building and training. So resources, whether online trainings or that in Geneva, that has really been appreciated again as an area of expertise and a strength that ERI brings. So this is, like I said in brief, the overview of the process. What has emerged for ERI's role in the future, we've just been able to put it into like 4 broad areas: connectors, communicators, advocates, and enablers. So ERI functioning as a facilitation to connect people across the globe. This is advocacy coordinators, schools, organizations, and how this network can also build towards human rights and advocacy education. So for example, immersions, engagement that's happening locally, globally, regionally. We were hearing about the Youth Ambassadors Program also having regional chapters. So in the connector role, this is a lot of what ERI is able to offer to people, to create this global network of advocacy coordinators, schools, and others who can then engage in advocacy. As communicators, the role of building more awareness and advocacy, on sharing information, resources which can be used in social justice and advocacy education, which can be used for local advocacy also. So maybe database resources, articles, reports, even amplifying and documenting local advocacy initiatives, sharing them across the network, and this constant communication with advocacy coordinators to then engage them at an international level also. So for example, the emails that come asking people to engage, participation that happens in international advocacy processes of the UN, all of that is emerging as one of the roles that the ERI plays as a communicator. As an advocate, of course, all the direct advocacy work that is happening, so all the engagement with the UN mechanisms, and to also sustain these partnerships at the international level with advocacy organizations. So a lot of what is done through collaboration at those levels by lobbying with countries, with states, so joint submissions, co-hosting events together, that is also a key role that ERI is playing, and that will need to continue to play. And along with that, also the nurturing of capacity at local level. So whether it is in countries, in zones, in regions, but again, in all of this, I hope everybody is realizing the role that the advocacy coordinators are playing, because wherever there is a local intervention, the network then depends on the advocacy coordinators to be able to liaison with ERI. Like I said, the role that youth can play and how creative can that be, or how engaging can that be, and how impactful can that be, is also something that emerges as a role for ERI. And of course, as an enabler, all the capacity building, whether it's a Zoom, an online training, the Geneva training, a lot of in-person training in schools, in countries, people have said that that will also help. Particularly on building advocacy skills, on understanding how to do advocacy at the local level, how to then connect this to international advocacy, and how to build this for youth. So whether it's through the internship program or through the school programs, and how advocacy can become a part of those, the focus on capacity building for advocacy is, I think, another strength area that emerges. Uh, so this is, like I said, just an overview. Of course, all of this means that the organization needs a lot of aligning of purpose with the congregation on a regular basis, building capacity of the organization itself, and making sure that there is sustainability in people, processes, purpose, so that going forward, all the work that begins can be taken ahead. Would you want to add anything here, Brother Tino, Brother Brian, Brother Terry?
That's fine. Yeah, thanks, Neha.
It's fine. That's fine.
Okay, I can just come to the advocacy coordinators bit, given that we don't have too much time. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Yes. So again, this is just the demographic profile of the respondents. I'm going to go straight to what has emerged as the role of advocacy coordinators. And this was interesting to see, because all the advocacy coordinators are also engaged with the network through different capacities. Some are working more with schools, some with the project, some are working with have other roles in the province there. So therefore, to look at how a common role emerges, or can emerge, or can be perceived, was also something that this process helped to do. So if you can see the points here, how do advocacy coordinators perceive their role? So one area definitely is the linkage and the liaisoning. So the bridge between ERI and each province, the schools, the ministries, other organizations working at local level. So the advocacy coordinator is like this bridge or link. Particularly to work and oversee and to lead the youth programs around social justice and advocacy education. So therefore, the role also as an extension of ERI to be able to conduct regular training, building the capacity of youth, of educators, and of the schools to raise awareness on human rights, on environment, on climate change, on other issues of justice. And a lot of you have mentioned like the Laudato Si or other campaigns, gender violence. So it may not be all of these, but some of these, or at different points, some of these issues, and raising awareness on them. And of course, to initiate and conduct advocacy campaigns and initiatives. And this is again the place where advocacy coordinators can play a more active role, to see how can there be advocacy initiatives at local level, which can then feed into what ERI is able to take at the global level. Of course, the challenges are, known to all of us, and these again differ based on where the coordinator is placed and the role they already play. So could be, scope and size of the province, time constraints, other work commitments, challenges related to funding, retention of staff, also maybe changes in staff in terms of who's looking at this role. If you're working with schools, then yes, school calendars being really full and therefore not being able to integrate a lot of, advocacy work. Some have also mentioned the limitations of the education system, that it does not really allow you to go beyond the needs of the curriculum, the classroom, and therefore to engage with advocacy mechanisms. And this could also be because of local political, cultural environments, and the difficulty in collaborating with government agencies, police, and other local organizations. Which is why in the emerging needs and in terms of what do advocacy coordinators therefore need from ERI, you can see that support in planning local advocacy initiatives, contacts with local organizations, opportunities for international advocacy. So definitely the need for more support to be able to do more advocacy has emerged as a need, and of course training resources that can help advocacy coordinators play this role. Some very specific asks were continued training for advocacy coordinators as refreshers, in terms of opportunity to make written or oral statements at the UN, continuing to strengthen this network through more peer sharing, through learning, and training for young people in the network through immersions and connections through schools. So, global platforms where the schools can come together, opportunities for them to interact, was also an area that emerged. I think also all advocacy coordinators recognize their role in also strengthening ERI's work. So definitely sharing information about ERI's work with the UN, encouraging participation in ERI's online trainings, inviting ERI to conduct trainings in their own local spaces, whether schools or projects, and mobilizing local communities for advocacy initiatives. This is where advocacy coordinators feel they can support ERI's work. I can see the time, so I'll pause here. There was also a document sent on the role of schools and what schools have said for the support they need from ERI. And we shared that because we felt many of the advocacy coordinators are working directly with schools in their provinces. And so this may help you to understand what is it that schools expect or need from ERI, and therefore what is the role of the advocacy coordinator in becoming this bridge or linkage and strengthening this relationship. So I can pause here and see if there's any questions, comments, thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Neha. That was a very comprehensive and quick overview of all the feedback that we received over there. Yeah, any quick comments or any clarifications, and then I might say a word about the way forward.
I suppose just to mention that, the situation can be very different in different countries in different parts of the world. Yeah.
And also in that context, some of you are working with in a dedicated office with human rights and advocacy as part of it. And as Neha brought out, so others are have roles, much broader than that, and this is just a part of that. So all that needs to be taken into account. And that's why we were really looking at how can ERI, in your very specific role and area, how can ERI more effectively support you? And that was really the point of this having this needs assessment. What I would suggest is I will circulate, okay, along with the notes later, okay, the clip of Neha giving us the overview. I've already circulated the 2 documents, all right, and maybe at our next meeting, okay, if you just go through that, and then if you have any clarifications, we do want to have a sort of a discussion in this group on how best to take these findings questions and your suggestions forward. Okay, so maybe at the next one we can work towards that discussion. All right.
Okay.
First of all, congratulations. This is like a mammoth task done, and it's a fantastic report which gives us such a clear picture of everything. And also, I like the role that you have outlined. Advocates, enablers, connecting, and all that. Yeah, but one thing I wanted to say, which Brother Tino has said, that this report needs more reflection and a deeper look. And what I would, quickly came to my mind was that if we really want to make it, like for my context, I would really like a little brief which I could share with all principals in terms of what ERI has, come up with their needs and what they can offer to schools and all. But that's very later. But first of all, really well done. This was a need, I think. Neha, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Neha. Any other comments or questions?
I think it's amazing, and there's so much information in there. I will sit and have a good look at this in my own time, but I also think I'm mindful of the amount of pressure that might also put onto ERI. You are already extremely busy with courses and all of the visits and everything else that you run, and I think we have to be mindful that we are the bridges, as Neha said, and it's up to us as well, very much to, because every time I run something or reach out, I get the support that I need, and it's about understanding what ERI is, and I think we need to communicate that as the bridges in our own community so that they are really aware of what Edmund Rice International is. I mean, people still in my school refer to me as, oh, ERI are coming in today. And like, I'm not Edmund Rice International. But I think because there's EREA, EREBB, ERE, you know what I mean? There's so many of ER branches. But I think really raising that profile in the schools, for example. I mean, I did that when I was teaching in school before I did any of this. I would run a whole day with my students about what is Edmund Rice International. So everyone in the school was really aware of that. It's not difficult to do because the information is already there. But I think it's for us as well to make sure parts of our own network really understand what it is. Because the information is all there. It's really easy to follow. But yeah, brilliant report. But brothers, do not be overburdened by that report. You already do a lot to support everyone. So, I feel very well supported, but I just wanted to say that really.
Thanks, Anne.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks very much. And that's why, this report will help us to fine-tune our work also, so that we are able to identify with your help which are the areas we need to focus on as far as supporting you. So thanks very much for that.